Hi, I'm Jayne at Rockin' Worms. I want to give a special welcome to all our new subscribers. A warm welcome back to everybody who's been, with me on this incredible journey that we're taking regarding red wigglers. And if you're just, stopping in to check us out, welcome to you too. And I hope you'll decide to, stick around. All right. We are here in one of my worm bins, and this is the first time that this bin has gone through its breeder cycle. But before we get into the bin, I want to back up just a second and show you this setup. This is a little mini fan that I found in my cameraman's office. So I pinched it for a couple hours today. And what I've been doing is blowing the fan. It oscillates over the top of the bin to dry down the castings a bit. Several of my commenters had said that they use a fan to dry down their castings, and why wasn't I using one? Well, I finally gave it a go, and I want to say that I like it. All right, it dried down the top of the bin, the castings, fairly quickly within an hour, hour and a half, to the point where I, moved the dry castings over to the side, let it dry down a little bit more. And then after about another half an hour or so, I ended up mixing all the material in together to redistribute the moisture that was, in the bin. Okay, so everything will sift uniformly, if you will. Okay, so the plus about using the fan is it did dry down the castings very quickly. Okay, the downside of it is it dries down the castings very quickly. So you need to be prepared to either, stop the dry down at whatever point it is that you want, or you need to be ready to sift out. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Now, this is a breeder bin that is coming off its first ever breeding cycle. And I started to sift this out earlier today, and then I started looking at the cocoons, and that's when I decided, hey, maybe you guys would be interested in seeing what a first-time breeder bin looks like and what the cocoons look like. So I actually do not know how many breeders are in here because I had picked them out of my grow out bins and just tossed them in to a new breeder bin setup. But you can see, the clitellums, they're a little dirty. Here's one with a nice yellow tail. And one of the things is they're a little bit on the smaller side. If you've, watched some of my other breeder bin videos, the Managing to Success videos, you'll notice that those breeders are a little bit more chunky, a little bit fatter. And that's because they've been in the breeding bin cycle for months, for several go-arounds. So they've been able to take advantage of less competition from their compatriots in a, grow out bin, as well as the higher calorie food of worm chow, because worm chow, along with vegetable powder and some amendments, are what I feed my breeders, okay? Where my grow out bins get primarily, not exclusively, but primarily the lower calorie vegetables, okay? So I'm gonna start sifting this because that's really what I wanna show you. Now, again, normally I would be picking these breeders out and putting them directly into their new breeder bin. However, two things. One, these breeders have volunteered to be part of a new experiment I'm running, and they need to go into a holding bin for a day or two until I can get to the next step of my experiment setup. So I don't want to put them directly into a new breeder bin. And two, I happen to be temporarily short of one of the main components of my basic bedding mix, which is the sifted cow manure. It's been raining and I haven't been able to restock my cow manure. So we just collected some today. It's drying out in the barn, and the plan is that I'll be able to sift some out tomorrow and set up a new breeder bin for them after I take them through the next step of the experiment. But so in the meantime, they're gonna live, you know, moderately happily in this holding container with the leftovers of the sifting. And you can see there's a lot of cardboard in here. If, you know, you can see that there's lots of little white specks, which are pieces of bacteria, and they have plenty of food. Okay, so they're gonna be fine to hang out in this smaller container for, you know, another 24 hours, okay? Okay, so I'm not gonna sift the whole bin because that's not really the point of this video. It is this. So this is the castings, and you can see how nicely they're sifting out, being, you know, appropriately dried down with the fan. So again, I really do like that. But I want to show you the cocoons, okay? So here are cocoons right here and some down here. And generally speaking, the cocoons are a little bit on the smaller side. Let me, here's another one. A little bit on the smaller side than what I normally get out of my more established breeder bins. And again, that cycles back to what I said in the beginning. These are new breeder bin breeders, okay? So they are on the smaller side, and that means that they throw off smaller cocoons, okay? That also means that more cocoons will sift through the larger 1/8 hole into the, you know, the interim space between the 1/8 and the 1/16. So that then subsequently means that if I want to pick out, rescue, collect these cocoons, that's more work for me, because I have to go in and literally pick these out one by one in order to put them into a cocoon bin, so I can keep these castings separate, and these castings go into my castings bucket, which will head right out into the garden. Now, if you are in a place where you can, let me do another sift since I'm just talking to you here. If you're in a place where, you know, you don't need to sift out your castings from your cocoons, or pick out your castings, or pick out your cocoons from your castings, then, you know, you don't need to do this, okay? But for me, since I have, you know, several breeder bins, and I am adding a breeder bin every week to 10 days, I cannot afford space-wise to have a new cocoon bin for every breeder bin, every cycle. It's like, you know, the old saying about the, you know, penny on a chessboard, and after, you know, 16 or 20 spaces, you're already a multimillionaire, because that exponential happens. And this isn't quite that bad, but given my space limitations being here in my house, it is something I have to very actively manage. So if I can, you know, take a lot of this volume out, take these beautiful castings out right away, that means that I can consolidate the cocoons into a smaller number of bins, okay? In fact, the cocoons that I'm going to be picking out of this breeder bin are going to be added to, let's see which one. these two cocoon bins right here, because these are cocoon bins that I started from breeder bins last week, okay? So the number of cocoons that come out of here, since I'm just adding cocoons and a small amount of their bedding castings, can go right into these bins without it being, you know, too much and too heavy and too awkward for me to manage. Okay, and actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I'm not adding the castings. The castings are going into the castings bucket. What's going to go into those cocoon bins are the overs here after I pick out the breeders, okay? Because there's cocoons in here, but here's another thing I want to show you with the cocoons. Let me bring this over a little bit closer to me so I can see. If we start pulling this apart, you can see there are cocoons in there. You can see that. You can see the cocoons, okay? But if you recall some of the overs I get from my more established breeder bins, this would be, you know, just littered with cocoons that you could see. And it's not that the number of cocoons aren't in here. It's just that they're much smaller and harder to see against the bedding. Okay, but you know, look at lots of cocoons, right? They're just a little smaller, a little harder to see. So anyways, the point of all this, right, is that when you start a new breeder bin, particularly if you're taking your breeders out of your grow out bins and those breeders a little bit on the skinnier side, give them a chance, okay? Let them run through a couple breeder cycles where you're feeding them the more high calorie foods. Again, I prefer predominantly worm chow into my breeder bins, but you know, higher calorie foods so these worms get a chance to pack on some weight, and then they're going to reward you by giving you bigger cocoons, which then will catch more in your bigger sieve, and you won't have to pick them out because most of them will all be in one place to begin with. And then what comes through into your middle space here between your two sieves will just be, you know, a relatively few cocoons that you can easily either pick out or say, forget it. There's, you know, maybe only 20 or 30 cocoons in there from a whole bin. They can just go out into the garden and live their best lives out there. Okay? So that's what I wanted to show you, what a new breeder bin looks like vis-a-vis the size of their cocoons compared to an older bin, an older breeder bin, and how that impacts the time it takes you to, you know, move on to the next step, whatever that next step is for your worm journey. All right, so that's it. I hope you have a good one. Please like and subscribe, share if you can, because that helps me very much to grow, continue to grow my channel and get even more new subscribers joining us here on the Castings crew. I am yours in the dirt, Jayne.